Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown on a Sunday night. Daniel Rutledge and Dave Forrester with you. Dave, there's only three games this week. You know what that means?
An hour and a half.
It means people are going to go, what the hell tangent did they go off on
Up
to
on,
fill
yeah.
an hour and
Is this
a
the bridged version? Is this going to be?
We'll see. Could we actually sub-hour it for the first time in about five seasons? I don't know. We'll see.
Possibly. Yeah.
We might do, given the nature of the games, and I've only seen two
Incidentally,
of them.
yeah. Before we get to that, why
Yeah.
why only three games? I'm slightly confused.
Uh, when we're doing when teams are playing four games a week in April, we'll remember that there was this
Yeah, it's just
random blank weekend for no obvious reason.
so we got no games at all on a Friday, when normally there's about five of them. No game for Newcastle, no game for London, and no game for uh,
Phew, who didn't play? There must be another one.
sorry, where's
Can't
it?
be that hard, can it?
Cheshire.
Cheshire, of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. No
Yeah,
game for Cheshire, and despite the fact Cheshire played four games in 9 days.
yeah,
The end of the
yeah.
season. It's a bit bizarre, but
Mm,
not the reason why.
no, indeed. Ours is but to go
Complain
through
about.
Surrey 89 66, Bristol Flyers 90 six. Bristol took the score from 6-all to 6-17 and basically never looked back.
Beat down. This was an
Mm,
old-fashioned beat down.
yeah,
And 1 second, I do apologize. We're going to drag this out a little bit by me letting the cat out of the room because I didn't realize
yeah.
it was in the room. 1 second.
That's all right. Now you see, I don't know if you can still hear me, Dave, but I
I'm
got
back.
a message from somebody to which I messaged back something along the lines of a team thinking they've cracked it and then they haven't, and that said person came back and went, "Did you say that in a Dave voice?" And I said, "Of course, it in a Dave voice."
There's a few. It was a beatdown. I mean, there's a few mitigating features for Surrey. It's their second game. It's Bristol's fifth game,
Mm,
including the European game. So, Bristol have had a lot more minutes on the court. And at this point of the season, minutes on the court actually matter. It's not really about time you've spent
mm,
together. It's minutes you, because your coach is trying to find out enough about you to make it all work. And on top of that, they're a new team and they're coming off a good win, so they're full of themselves. And everything is rosy, and we've seen it all before. It's back to the old mantra. Momentum is no, there is no such thing as game by game momentum.
mm,
All momentum, all that does is con you into believing that you're doing well,
mm.
and make you relax. Um, and I'm afraid, so he kind of. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh on Bristol. I was trying to think about, what is kind of the components of this game and how much of it is Bristol, how much of it is Surrey. But my impression, it's about 70% Bristol, 30% Surrey.
Mm,
I mean, Surrey were, if you're a professional basketball team, I mean, I looked at the stats at the end. I couldn't believe they only had 20 turnovers.
mm.
You know,
Yeah,
I
it felt like they had that in the first quarter.
it didn't it? I was looking, my guess, my number that I was guessing it was 27 when I
Mm,
went, to the stats. And Bristol, to be fair, did everything that they've done really well. They were playing without McCormack, which is a mitigating factor for them, which they didn't need. McCormack, by the way, we forgot last week, deserves the brickbat of being the one of the few players to try and call an unlawful timeout in his second season in the league.
yes.
When he's lying on the floor and trying to call it. I mean, come on, when you can't, the first year, okay, but the second year, and you're lying on the floor trying to call timeout, how it. So we forgot that last week, just in case people think we don't review our own
Mm,
performance.
mm,
But so he wasn't there, so maybe he was being held out of shame. Who knows?
mm,
Um, but Bristol looked like a well-oiled machine, aided by the fact that Surrey kept throwing them the ball.
mm.
Um, the game was there was nothing to the game. I mean, we had
There
two
was
interesting.
the
We had two or two BBL referees, SLB referees doing,
yeah, yeah,
um, and it just got kind of Bristol made shots and made plays and moved the
yeah.
basketball, and Surrey kind of threw the ball away.
I mentioned the 6-17. There were two main runs after that: 13-4 in the second quarter and a 17-0 start to the third quarter. I did wonder at one stage whether Surrey were going to score a field goal in that third quarter. They
Yeah,
made a couple of threes at the end.
that third quarter was, like the, he's already dead meme,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
I had the Simpsons meme, he's already dead.
yeah.
Um, because they just piled it on.
Mm,
And the thing with being a new team is, and they are effectively a new team, in reality, they're starting five new players there. So his bench players are Andrew Lawrence, obviously, he's been around, Nadas, Teo, etc. But the production they got from their starting five in the first game, they're going to need throughout the season.
mm,
And I thought Bristol did an excellent job of, outside of the first two or three possessions, actually, of challenging the guards and making them make plays off the dribble,
mm,
as opposed to standing there and making that shoots, make them and let them shoot. And what it meant was that Lily in particular, and also Polite to a certain degree, they did a lot of dribbling, and that doesn't necessarily generate the best
mm,
shots.
mm.
And then Kuntz had an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Literally in the first half, seven, 6, 7 turnovers in 17 minutes, I think, in total.
Mm,
Just and you could see he was battling himself the whole game. He missed a couple of threes, which is all right, but it's a turnovers. So he's got to figure out what his game is and stick with it. Um, but for Bristol, you have to say, it really was a pretty impressive disemboweling of Surrey.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Polite, by the way, I discovered on Eurobasket, his dad is junior, so he's the third.
he's the third. He's a polite the third. Politer,
Mm.
politest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's conjugate the verb.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, Bristol. I mean, the two things about Bristol. One, um, I was a bit. Joachim was a bit scary for the league
Mm.
because he was 8 of 10 in this game. He had
Yeah.
20 points. Didn't
19.
like without actually appearing to involve himself much,
Mm.
without taking what you think was a bad shot or making a bad decision. And the ease in which he was able to impact the game from the two guard spot, that's a real kind of eye opener.
Mm.
And the other thing is, I was really impressed with the other Anderson. Um,
Zach.
yeah, and the reason I was really impressed with him is so far, including the preseason game I saw, all we've seen out of him is basically standing there and knocking down threes at about a 45% clip.
Mm.
And in this game, he made multiple good decisions off the dribble, made shots off the dribble, little fadeaways. He also got to the middle and passed it. And he looked like somebody who had a bit more to his game than we've seen already.
Mm.
And it's easy when you're up 20 to start jacking happy shots. And they didn't. They really kept the foot down. The final guy obviously is Brown, who got me out got my
Mm.
eyebrows,
Yeah.
my eyes out my sockets, when he went down the lane and jammed it with his left hand,
Mm.
crossover in left hand. And, if they're getting that degree of, because he can shoot as well, so if they get that degree of production out of their backup point guard spot, it doesn't really matter if Anderson makes shots or not because everybody else is moving.
Mm.
Um, and you would say that, defensively they were on a string, they were communicating, and you know, overall just looked like a really confident, comfortable team that's
Mm.
comfortable in its own shadow, in its own skin, and comfortable with each other.
Mm.
That was my impression of them. Obviously, it's one game, and snowballs tend to gather pace faster earlier in the season when
Mm.
teams have got little kind of feed fallback. But they just kept pushing the ball, snowball down the hill until it built up a momentum of its own. And outside of that, it's kind of back to the drawing board for Surrey.
Yeah.
They really, they're a little bit, you're a little bit concerned about Surrey, kind of, if the guards, if the guards can be held down. Graham, the centre, had a few touches, but really didn't show much kind of creativity. I think he's going to be a rebounding kind of big guy. And then obviously last year they had Ray and James who were really, really consistent scorers, in particular James, who was able to score from the fourth spot. And I'm not sure that they've got one of them at the moment. Um, so we'll see. I mean, we'll see. But
Mm.
it's a course corrector for Surrey. They probably needed it. It'd been better for everybody if it happened on the road, so they didn't have to play like that in front of their own fans.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but Bristol holding it at 66, and as I say, Yoakum and Anderson um, kind of really raised that in my eyes, the kind of their ceiling raised with the way those two played in that game.
mm,
Just moving things forward as to how they're going to progress forwards. Um, the other guys are kind of what they are. Brody is what he is. Dugalich is what he is. But those two, and with that type of production from Brown, really could kind of elevate them.
mm. Lily with 14 points was the only Surrey player in double figures. Their shooting numbers were 34, 26, 52. Ouch. You mentioned the 20 turnovers.
Yeah,
Um, Joachim, 19 points, 8 of 10 shooting. Holden, triple double, 16 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists.
and
Zach,
six steals. And I didn't mention him, and that's probably an oversight but I didn't mention him because we know who he is.
mm,
Not because I take him for granted, but because he's been in the league 3 years, he's not a surprise. He's always been a triple double, one of the few triple double candidates in the league, because one, he passes the ball so well out the post in particular. Two, he rebounds and rebounds his own misses as well.
mm, mm,
So, he goes and finds the basketball. And generally, the issue is whether or not he's going to score the ball and therefore how you're going to guard him.
mm,
Problem with Surrey is that they didn't guard anybody well in this game.
no.
But it's very difficult to do so when you're throwing the ball away
Yeah, yeah,
time
yeah,
after
yeah.
time. Whatever the scouting reports are, it all kind of falls apart when the new players are in each other, are in their heads thinking, I'm throwing the ball away, I'm throwing the ball away, we're not scoring at the other end. So your defense falls apart a bit. So, they made probably every mistake there is to make about guarding Cam Holden.
Mm,
They doubled off the weak side when he had the ball in the post. They sent um, help from the big guy so he could dump it off for dunks. They got mismatched on little guys so he could then power in the middle, and if he missed it, he'd get his rebound and put it in. Um, and Cam Holden's a guy you definitely have to have a scouting report for, and they didn't, and he absolutely dominated the game. And so I'm not minimizing what he accomplished or what he did. It's just that that's what he does. That's what
yeah,
his set
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah. Zach Anderson, the thing that surprised me was that he hadn't had a triple double before, actually. I
I
kind of
think he may have
assumed he
had one
would.
in college. He may
Yeah,
be a college candidate for one, simply
mm,
because he's one of those guys who doesn't shoot the ball that much.
yeah,
So you've
yeah.
always got a chance if you're rebounding and you got the ball in your hands to pass. But the other thing is that I like about Bristol was that they got the ball to him in the flow of an offense.
Mm.
It wasn't that it was just kind of giving him the ball and forcing him to back it down. They were able to find him when he was in the post. Everybody seems to be willing to give up the basketball on that team. You
The
know,
quirk of the triple double is the first two triple doubles in Super League basketball history have both been by Bristol players against Surrey in consecutive games.
Evan Walsh, yeah,
Walsh, yeah.
yeah,
Zach Anderson, 14 points and 10 rebounds. They had 62 points in the paint. They had 20 second chance points, and they had 21 points off turnovers and 22 fast break points.
yeah. And I mean, as I say, I think that's probably a underestimated number, to be honest. It just felt like, you know, Surrey's Surrey's almost had a collective brain freeze at
Mm,
times, particularly in the first and the second quarter, with their decision making offensively. And then it came down to and that Lloyd kind of was a bit annoyed with his guards, I think, because he sat them down quite early because they weren't looking after the basketball. So he brings his bench in. Um, they haven't had that many minutes together. They got young guys in there as well with Cholovinskas and Ling playing. And he's expecting them to kind of hold the fort, but ultimately the Americans are there to play like they did against Manchester, not like they did against Bristol.
mm,
And that's the way of of professional basketball, at this level. It's hard to maintain consistent performances. We'll talk about PJ Smith against in Manchester today
mm.
as
Well,
well later
let's
on.
let's do that now.
Yeah,
Manchester basketball 87, Leicester Riders 72. Nate Martin out for Leicester, so a first start since April 24 for Duke Shelton, an SLB debut for Gabe Asaboy. I've been saying it all day.
yeah,
Asaboyan. Bit up and down in the beginning. Not a lot of scoring. Leicester led 10-4 after 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, and that's because PJ Smith was coming off a 34-point game
Yeah.
and basically couldn't hit anything,
Mm,
and that's not a physical thing. That's just kind of that mental thing about, oh, I've cracked it, or
mm,
early game, or this is coming to me. I'm feeling good about myself. It's the worst way to be. Feeling good about yourself. It's horrible. Don't feel good about yourself. Feel that you've got to be on the um constantly pressurizing yourself to get better and focus on it. And that'll be a learning experience for him straight out of college. Losing Martin's a big one for Leicester,
mm,
because he's been one of the kind of the stabilizing guys around them. They've been able to play around him a little bit. You know what you're going to get out of him. He's not going to jump out the gym, but he's been basically in the right place. He's finished plays at the rim. He's, if you were telling me, which two guys could they least afford to lose at this point in time in the season, it would be Ave and Martin.
mm,
Those would be the two guys who are the kind of the everybody else is kind of playing around them at the moment. So losing him, impacting, hurts them a lot. It means that Shelton goes from the energy guy to kind of having to hold down the middle. It means that they haven't really got a backup centre. In this game they played Acott at the backup five at times. Other times it was Sulaim. Is it Suleiman or
Sulaiman. Sulaiman.
Sulaiman?
Yeah.
And neither of those guys are fives.
Mm,
And probably may even not be fours, and Dooku a little bit as well. So that throws everything out of rhythm as well. So that was a tough break for them. It's really, really quite. It's sport,
mm,
they went through a season last year with with a really solid team, with a deep team, and never had an injury to a starting five member, basically.
mm, mm,
And now this year, when you actually need the guys where they could have probably dealt with it last year
mm,
with what they had. Now when you need the consistency of it, now you get an injury and you lose your big guy.
mm,
So everything pays itself back in some way all the time, and that made it difficult. But yeah, they played with a good energy, but they need broken plays to score Leicester at the moment.
mm,
They need to score in transition. They need um, to find ways to get to the foul line and that type of thing, because they're not blessed with what you describe outside of Battle, who's kind of a catch and attack off the catch and shoot type of guy. He's not
mm,
really a kind of stand at the top and break you down guy. Outside of him, they're not blessed with guys you would say are, are pure scorers. And they still haven't got that, in that stretch forward position is tough for them as well. So they did well with off their defense. Their defense was pretty good early on. And that's why they got the break. And Manchester kind of sleptwalked a little bit through the first quarter, I thought. The two guards weren't there, and it was actually the third guard, Johnson,
mm,
who gave them some impetus. And the twist with that, of course, is that he's not coming off a 34-point game. He's
no.
probably thinking about his job.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because he's the third guard, and the other two guards are going, are playing out their mind and winning games. So now he's thinking, well, what's my role here? Well, this is exactly what his role is. When one of the other
Mm,
two hasn't got it, to step up and make plays. And I thought he was the differential in the game. And of course, Manchester have three American guards they can use, and of a certain pedigree, and Leicester have some rookies in there. So it's
mm,
hard.
mm.
It's a hard comparison.
They got up double figures last year, Evie and Battle making threes. Ottaboyan a little fortunate, I thought, not to get a technical foul
It
somewhere.
was a little fortunate. I mean, let's be honest, it is a bit of an elephant in the room, but refereeing wasn't great,
Mm,
to say the least. I mean, Osaboy, he's an interesting guy. I looked him up. He's interesting because of his stats. His stats are basically a guy who doesn't score much, but then he has, from that position, he has more rebounds than he has points, and he has about 3 assists or 2 assists a game. And he played in Canada and he played in college, and his numbers are always there, which makes you interested, because most big guys are kind of going to go and put the ball in the basket, that type of
mm,
thing. So you think, oh, he's got something about him in relation to the way he sees the game, just beyond being a kind of a banger who's going to get the ball in the post and score. Um, I have to say, the kind of the stuff that he was doing was the kind of stuff that if I was back in the Eagles locker room with an experienced team, we would have just laughed at.
mm,
And then taking it to him on the other end.
mm,
Because ultimately, you've been in the league literally 20 minutes.
mm,
And the ones who talk the loudest are the ones, Zach Irvin's been in the league all for a year, for the best part of a season now.
mm,
Doesn't talk like that.
mm,
Doesn't need to do that, you know. So the people at the time who make the loudest noises are the ones that generally are flying too close to the sun,
mm,
and and there's a certain kind of comparison with Shelton on this as well, you know, because there's times when Shelton just needs to play, and we've talked about that before.
mm,
So yeah, I mean, it was a, I mean, it was a double taunting, basically two in a row, and you know, that's the type of thing that refs have to get a hold of, because that's the type of thing that leads to retribution at the other end,
mm,
you know, bottom line. And so, and you're right, there was a hard foul before that. There was a reasonable foul, but a hard foul before that
mm,
on Battle on the baseline. So, no, I mean, he's going to be, he's already marked as one to watch, one to keep an eye on.
mm.
And the problem is, from a simple playing perspective, if he doesn't harness that right, you know, he becomes a target,
Yeah.
you know, and you put,
Even the going and sitting on the thing when you've been pulled out of the game because the referees had a word and whatever. I think he got did he
yeah, he
whatever
got,
happened? He got warning or whatever it
yeah,
was, and he goes and sits on the thing. Oh, he had got a technical by
yeah,
that
yeah.
point. He goes and he sits on the thing, and you sort of think,
And he's actually probably didn't see it on the camera, but he mouthed the words joke. No, the
mm,
referee might have been bad, it might have been. But the bottom line is it's your second game.
yeah,
No, it's your first league game, okay? You don't need to be the story
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah,
get in, do your job, and then your personality can come out with the team.
mm,
But if you're joining a team late and then you kind of involve yourself, you might be the best teammate in the world, and we'll have to wait and see. You know, and his stats suggest that he's probably a good teammate.
mm,
Um, but that level of emotion is a red flag for me on the first or second game.
mm,
You know, I just want you to do your job, Roy Keane, do your job, you
mm.
know, and and get on with it. So yeah, he's interesting.
Mm.
We'll
But
see.
he certainly had an impact when he was out there. That's
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
mate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Positive.
And of
Yeah,
course, with the first game, you are jacked up, so you know your
yeah.
first game, so you kind of get that, and you give him a little bit of space. But he's on the radar now, and
Mm.
generally, you don't want to be on my radar.
No, no, no.
You know, avoid the
John
radar. You know, think yourself as a
Johnson, Jo-
Ukrainian drone. Avoid the.
Johnson, Jones, and Irvin threes leveled the scores at 33 all midway through the second quarter. Into the third quarter, Cleary at one and Akon at the other hitting threes. Then Manchester went 59-51 ahead with 100 seconds to go in the third quarter. Battle tied it up at 61, 100 seconds into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, Cleary is fun to watch. I like watching Cleary because he has a kind of he's like a mini Kevin Durant the way he shoots the ball. He kind of raises up and almost shoots it with way above his head with kind of one hand, and he's got a nice stroke. You know, he's got a nice game about him. Defensively, I'm not quite so sure yet, but he's young, and obviously he fouled himself out in this game. But you know, he's a three man who we really need to keep an eye on because he's not far from on what he's showing. He's not far from kind of GB level. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the next squad. So he makes a couple of shots at the beginning and catch and shoot, and he shoots shots that you think he should shoot. That makes
Mm,
sense. Doesn't shoot shots that I'm thinking, oh, you can't make that, you know, and that's a bit of shot decision making is very important. Acott obviously was playing upper position, so he wasn't really being guarded as much. He made a couple from the wing because he was playing the bigger spot. Um, and yeah, to be honest, at the 59-51 thing, I thought that was it. Leicester had one more run in them,
mm,
but they couldn't, you know, the second half, their offense really spluttered because they didn't get anything cheap. You know, they didn't get much in transition. And in the half court, particularly without Martin as a base to set screens and to kind of get the cheap ones around the rim, Shelton by this point had got, well, I agree with you actually. I thought it was an unfortunate technical.
mm,
I mean, one referee called a foul on him, which probably was a foul. And then he waved it, he kind of put his arms out to the other referee, and the other referee decided I'm going to call a technical.
mm,
See, I'm more interested in referees calling technicals in relation to interaction between players than I am between interaction between players and refs
mm.
because no one's watching the ref, and players are muttering all the time about refs calls. So, we've had this visual dissent conversation many times. But
It's interesting because the EuroLeague and obviously EuroLeague do their own little variation on that. One of their points of emphasis this year is about reactions to referees, and they've got various clips that they shared with the commentators and coaches and players and whatever about stuff like that. And what happens is you get into a grey area of where a call has not been made or should have been made versus you know
Yeah.
waving somebody off like that. My sense of it is Shelton got the technical because of everything that had happened before and the warnings, and we're not going to take any more of this. And actually, his reaction was lesser than the things earlier that should have
Well, of
been
course it was, yeah.
punished.
Of
Yeah.
course it wasn't. And then unfortunately, whenever you see you get to that point, that's where the inconsistency,
Mm,
kind of kicks in, because then it appears to be blatantly inconsistent. As I
mm,
say, so if you knock somebody on the ground and score, and then basically move your head towards them in a taunting manner, and say something, then that's an automatic.
mm,
That's an automatic, because that's otherwise that's saying you, cool your jets here, calm
mm,
down, because
mm,
this game's not going to go that way. Waving your arms in the direction of the referee is not an automatic. It
mm,
shouldn't be, because it depends on what's said, and particularly when it's not even the ref who's made the call.
mm,
I just thought, as I say, I think that we've got refs who are operating right at the limit of their capabilities. I'm afraid, who are operating out with their experience, unfortunately.
mm,
And there's a difference, because if you ref Div 2 or Div 3, or ladies or wheelchair or whatever, um, you don't have to deal with all the physicality.
mm,
It's how you deal with the physicality that matters. It's the 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 the, the, the cheap shots, or the physical kind of defensive block charges, the battling under the basket, and on top of that, the plays at the rim. I mean, Sulaiman got called for a ridiculous foul in this.
mm. Yeah, yeah.
A ridiculous. Even now, there's a couple of times. To be fair, I've called that foul call ridiculous a couple of times in the last year as well.
Mm,
It's not just the fact that we got new, less experienced refs, but he made an unbelievable play on the ball.
mm.
An unbelievable offensive play, on defensive play. And then the second half, a similar play that whatever his name is,
That's a boy, man. That's a
Ossie made.
boy, that's a boy.
Yeah, Ossie made against him, where there was actually more contact, where Ossie got the block,
Mm,
right? And that wasn't called a foul,
mm,
right? And and Sulaiman's got to be thinking, I can't play a better defense than that. I can't make more of a play than that. That's an unbelievable play for his team to be
mm,
getting back in transition, to avoid the contact, to jump backwards, and to reach up and to still block a shot,
mm,
right? And he gets called for that, and you saw the look on his face, and he's absolutely spot on.
mm,
You can't. And that will be a ref who's not seen that level of physical athleticism in the game that they've previously refed.
mm,
That's the reality of it, because they're not used to it. So it's not a perfect situation at all. Happily, the game wasn't close enough where it made much of a difference.
mm.
I think you would say that basically Manchester be able to run away with it at the end with their outside three.
Johnson, Cleary, Smith hit threes, 15 unanswered points they had to lead 78-64 from one down to 14 up.
Yeah, you've got to keep scoring on the road. That's the problem for Leicester. You're not going to hold those guys at Manchester down the whole game to kind of mid 60s. And Leicester kind of have to find a way to create some offense. And as I say, without Martin, it hurts. He got no cheap points. He didn't get anything back to the basket, really. Um, so they're relying on somebody going off,
Mm,
making a ton of shots. And in reality, Mitchell's struggling a bit at the backup point. Evie is, had a good solid game. You'd have to say had a solid game, 17 points, something like that. Um, but they're going to have to find something else.
mm,
It's tough. You can't replace Zach Jackson.
mm.
You can't. You don't have Zach Jackson to give the ball to at the end of the
Shot
clock,
clock. Yeah.
or even an Ethan Wright who coming in can drop 12 points in 3 minutes. Who's a professional scorer. So they're gonna have to kind of find their way around that. So they got some issues. To some. It depends what Martin's injury is like,
Mm,
because without him, their ceiling, their floor actually lowers without Martin quite substantially.
mm.
You don't feel like Shelton can play, 30 minutes a game. Um, so he needs to be back, and they probably still need one more body.
Johnson, 5 of 7 for three. Jordan Johnson, 18 points. Cleary, 15 points. Jones, 14 points, 5 assists. Battle, 21 points, 8 rebounds. Evie, 17 points. They got 12 points, 9 rebounds, 22 turnovers as well, Leicester.
Yeah, that's tough. And again, it's kind of, Manchester have got quite deep, and they play quite a few guys. Um, but it's when offense is hard.
Mm,
You know, an offense is hard. Sometimes you turn the ball over a little bit more than you should. And at the moment, their offense is hard.
mm. Let's come to the final game, which I've not seen a single play of. That's a lie. I saw a couple of clips on social media.
Right.
Sheffield Sharks 77, Caledonia Gladiators 71. First question, Deloach played 134. What happened there?
Yeah, well, nothing happened, but it appears that he's pulled his calf muscle
Mm,
just walking on, just literally being in the block, no contact play, nothing happening.
mm,
No, no, not with the basketball in his hand. Kind of jogged down the court, and he's kind of in the block, not fighting for position even, just kind of waiting to come up and set a screen.
mm,
And he turned to the ref and kind of hobbled towards the ref and sat down.
mm,
And it looked the way he was carried off, he was kind of helped off arms on shoulders by his teammates. It looked like he pulled his calf muscle. To me, I'm not. Seen a few of that before. It could actually, you know, the way he went down, it could it could almost have been an Achilles, but he didn't seem to be in enough pain for the Achilles, if that made any
mm,
sense.
mm,
Just didn't look good. I mean, he was subsequently he was seen at the end of the third quarter on the camera on with crutches next to him.
mm,
Um, but it didn't look good because there was literally no contact,
mm,
you know. So it was just I think it was probably a torn calf or a pulled calf muscle.
mm.
So that brought Archerobia in the game early.
Yeah, and relatively low scoring. A couple of Dirk Williams threes had Sheffield 16-8 in front.
Yeah, well, Dirk was the reason Sheffield won this game
Mm,
by a long way, and by a long way the best player on the court. Um, this game, I'm afraid, was it wasn't, but again, it was a little bit like the game last week. At Sheffield, Caledonia didn't make a three in the first half, just like Newcastle didn't last week. Um, I'm afraid it was a game that I didn't think Caledonia were ever going to win. But Sheffield, but it was refereed very poorly, very poorly. I'm afraid I don't like saying that. The notable statistical point of the first half was that Kevin Allen scored 70%
mm.
of Caledonia's points.
What I got from that, let me just run through this bit. Kern with five to have the Sharks up 23-10 a minute into the second quarter. Allen pulled it down six. What I've got is between Caledonia going from 10 points to 32 points, so late in the first quarter to early in the third quarter. Allen scored 21 of the 22 points that Caledonia
Half
scored.
time, he had 21 out of 30. So in immediately, it'd be in the second quarter, he had 23 out of 32. He had 75% of their points.
Mm,
And they, you know, Caledonia, to be fair, they just could not make a shot.
mm,
So Ragsdale wasn't knocking down the shots he was knocking down. Last week, Wright wasn't able to score the ball either. You know, they got and what I'll say about Allen is that, you know, Allen is a very, very good offensive player, but I'm going to
mm,
leave the rest there,
mm.
you know, because they got some issues as well at the other end. Um, there was a call. I mean, I'm afraid 5 minutes in the first, they brought the young lad who just came over car off the bench,
Mm,
played with a ton of energy, plays a second centre. You know, Williams basically didn't play the centre spot this week. And he came off the bench after about 5 minutes. He played with a ton of energy. He recycled balls. You know, he really was a factor in the game, albeit offensively struggled. But about 5 minutes in the game, I think Spielman threw him the ball down low and he flicked it up off the backboard. And one of the Sheffield players came and swatted it away about 5 seconds after it hit the backboard.
mm,
And nobody called, and you know, and there wasn't, and it was in front of Johnny Bunyan, and nobody called a goaltend. And it was the
mm,
most obvious goaltend you could ever see. One of the refs is saying still going up. You know,
mm,
actually, and I'm looking, thinking he literally, you know, bounced off the backboard, and then you know, that bigger gap, you
mm,
know, before I think Ocharobias came and swatted it away. And I'm thinking, well, okay, we got some problems. If you're not going to spot that call, then you know, it was like Jonathan Brown's dunk. You know, my eyes immediately go, well, you've got to see that. And Caledonia think they got the hard. You know, Caledonia think that they got the wrong end of the stick at one point in the game. It was 17 fouls to 7. I'm not necessarily sure they got that much of the wrong end of the stick, to be honest, because I think I like Sheffield's defense, and they did guard. I thought at times particularly well. And Caledonia don't have a great deal of separation ability with their ball handling. But Overall, yeah, I mean, outside of Allen scoring the ball in the first half, Sheffield didn't really play with much cohesion, if I'm honest. You know, Chapman and Nixon didn't shoot the ball well at all. At one point, the stat was, you know, Caledonia's 1 of 17 from three, and Sheffield's 3 of 18.
Mm,
You know, so it was one of those games whereby there was a lot of stuff, there was a lot of shots being missed. But Dirk was the difference.
mm,
One thing about Dirk is his defense has improved. Maybe it was always like that. I don't know. I don't remember it being like that. But going away and playing in Hungary and in France, his defense is on a different level to what I remember. Actually, on a different level to much of the SLB. I thought he was really good. And he's the guy who, if he gets mismatched on a big, you know, which happened a few times, he's just going to step back and knock down a three.
mm,
And he did that a few times, and that got Sheffield separation. We
mm,
then came to the third quarter, and I'll talk you through because obviously you didn't watch this game, where we had a cluster omni shambles, I'm
mm,
afraid. Um, Again, maybe which led Johnny on camera actually be hearing him saying, you know, we say something on the line. It's the middle, about 3 minutes ago in the third quarter. He's actually saying, you know, we can't keep going on like this if people don't know what's going on. And I'm going to break it down what happened, right?
mm,
So the game was going back and forwards. It got down to about six, and then you know whatever, and about 4 minutes to go, and so at the 8 minute mark in the third quarter, Kevin Allen was called for an offensive foul on the screen, which was actually a bad call from the weak side. Then Toto Fagbenley a couple of minutes later was called for a charge, which was a good call, albeit one of the refs wanted to call a block. The one of the baseline called a charge, so they got that right. Then the 5 minute mark, Rian Holland was called for a foul on when he hit Prentice Nix on the arm. Oh, that's perfectly fine. Okay. So that's their three fouls. Okay. Um, a minute and a half later, Caledonia put a three up. Spielman goes in for the rebound. Spielman's called for a push off on the rebound. Probably a reasonable call. He had his kind of arm in the back. Okay. So that's the fourth team foul ball live. Okay. And I know this because the numbers are on the, obviously you have the fouls on the bottom.
yeah, yeah.
But I've been back through the live stats, right? So what then happens is that they keep playing as they should. Okay. And the possession at the next possession, what happened? And it was Spielman who actually fouled Dirk Williams. Okay.
Mm,
That's relevant for later, right? So they keep playing. And the next possession, um, Jimenez takes a charge, and I think Ratinho runs into Jimenez, and it's a charging foul. Okay, that's fine. What then happens, and I had to piece it together afterwards because you couldn't see on the camera because you were doing all those silly close-up shots of things we don't need to see, right? But what then happens is Nick Kern ends up on the line for two shots,
mm,
right? This is off an offensive foul by Jordan Ratinho, right? And what has happened is that the table has notified the refs that the fourth foul of the quarter committed by Spielman was actually the fifth foul,
okay.
right? And they have gone and made a correct, right? Which it wasn't, because you actually see two fouls come up. There was no technicals or anything. You see
Mm,
two little bars added on the screen, and you
mm,
go to the live stats. That was only the fourth foul. So
yeah,
the table has wrongly notified them it was a fifth foul. They've then put the wrong shooter on the line as a correctable error.
yeah,
But Nick Kern on the line
yeah,
shoot two shots, right? Which means that shouldn't count either, because it was Dirk Williams who was
yeah,
fouled, right? So they've given Sheffield 2 points, right?
yeah.
It was all done relatively quickly, right? No one seemed to know, because the commentators didn't know why Sheffield was shooting two foul shots. There was no technicals given.
Mm,
Okay, so and nobody has gone kind of called the coaches to the table to say this is what is going on to any degree. To which point you hear Johnny Bunyan saying, if we can't keep going on like this with people not knowing what they're doing,
mm,
right? What then makes it worse is the very next play down. Okay, it's a fast break, and Nick Kern absolutely gives them as he's going into the rim, absolutely shoves off Kyle Jimenez with his elbow, and knocks him about 6 feet back, and no call is made. At which point Johnny gets a well overdue technical. I
mm,
think I'd have got one earlier, for saying, you know, what's good. At that point it was 17-7 on the foul count, and then obviously we get the odd makeup call later on.
mm,
Okay, um, and I don't want to throw people under the bus, right? But that can't happen. You know, that cannot happen in a top level pro basketball game, whereby someone is put on the line because somebody thinks the fourth foul of the quarter is actually the fifth foul of the quarter,
Mm.
and we're trying to catch up on it, right? If that is the case, they need to go back forensically and check those other fouls.
Yeah, yeah,
They need to, and it needs to be explained, and it needs to be looked at carefully. They've got all the time in the world to get it right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
They got it utterly wrong.
Because ultimately, that's if the table has told them they've missed it, then it's a table making a mistake rather than.
Yeah, that's
But
my
it's the referee's job to go. Well, hang on a minute. Let's just think back to the calls that have been made in this.
well, and that's my assumption.
Yeah,
My assumption is that the table have notified them of that because how would they otherwise have known?
no.
Okay, but what's happened is, I think, because of the way that the screen, I don't know if your screen is linked up to the lights on the scoreboard or how the fouls, the team fouls are linked.
I think team files comes from live stats on
Right.
the
Okay. Well,
screen.
you'll see on
So it is possible. I suppose it is possible that the live stats were wrong and the table was
no,
right.
the live stats were right because I've checked them.
Okay.
Right. What's happened is there's been a double foul. There's been two fouls put on, so the score goes from three fouls to five fouls,
Okay.
one foul. And I
On
went
live stats or on the thing.
no on the TV,
Okay.
not on
But
live
that
stats.
I think that comes from live stats though, is my point. I think
I
it's
don't
fed
think
by the
well,
same thing.
well, it's been now there is I think well actually I might be right because I do think that actually there may be on live stats two Jet Spielman fouls that have been recorded when in fact it was only one.
Okay, interesting.
Okay, at 3:14, 3:14 in the third quarter. Um, Either way, it's an omni shambles. It can't happen. Um, it and as I say, it's further impacted by the fact that they miss an
Oh
obvious.
yeah, I see what you mean. Spielman, I've just had a look. Spielman at 3:14 has got both an offensive foul and a personal foul.
Yeah, yeah. So call it what you want.
Yeah.
Wrong, and that can't happen. That sounds like a broken record. You know, um, and as I say, it's made worse by the fact that they blew an obvious goal in the first half and an obvious offensive foul later on. Um, and just unfortunately, again, it's people who are in it over their heads. I'm afraid. Um, it's hard to maintain positive body language with players when that type of stuff is going on.
Mm.
You only have one shot at getting the respect of the players, and if you've not got it, you've got a problem. So anyway, that can be picked over in due course, and we'll
Mm.
talk about a little bit about the whole saga with the refs at the end. What then happened was Ragsdale got going a little bit, but Sheffield were able to make some shots. They got a good game out of Kern. Kern is basically your archetypal six-man scorer. You give him the ball, but he's just putting his head down and going. They gave him the ball at the point a couple of times. You know, Caledonia struggled to defend anything in the screen and roll with Allen in the game. Johnny had to take him out with about 7 minutes to go. Went small because he couldn't really put the young lad in car because he was struggling offensively. So they ended up going small, which gave them a little bit more defensive presence. But Kern a couple of times just literally got just two right-hand dribbles from the top of the key, literally from dribbling the ball over half court and running the offense. And he's at the rim for a layup without anything there. So the Caledonia's screen and roll defense was a struggle. And
So
that
I'm assuming that was part of his eight in a 15-4 run early in the fourth quarter, which basically sealed the game at 68-58,
it did. And then
68-50.
that's right. And then Caledonia made some threes, and they do have a potent, 3-point shooting team, but they're still struggling for guard scoring. Holland had probably 6 points in this game, maybe. And not with the air of somebody who is kind of running the team to get everything where it wants to go. Jimenez plays hard, plays tough, but there was a struggle at times getting the ball over half court for him. He was being turned, so it was hard work. And Wright and Ragsdale are kind of their wing scorers, but there's a little bit of duplicity between them, so they're not playing together much. Um, Having them both on the court. Fag Benley remains an enigma. There's times that you think, as I say, I'm not. it's a battle with him because he does little things right, but there's times that he's guarding Dirk Williams and Dirk just blows past him. Just like last week when he was guarding Rideau, was it Rideau or Robinson? Robinson just blows past him and gets a layup, and you're thinking there's no way in the world that with his athleticism, his length, and his quickness that he should be getting scored on in a just as in a one-on-one situation by a guy like that. And he's struggling. Alan is just a high level scorer. Um, but as I say, that's not their issue. It
Mm,
wasn't you could say it wasn't the first half. Nobody else scored the ball, but they play differently with him in the game because he is somebody who is always looking to get himself in a position where he can score the ball. And what they didn't get in the first half of this game, and Sheffield didn't get it either, to be fair, because they didn't have Deloach, they had Acherobi in there. Um, Nobody was getting any paint touches and kickouts.
mm,
So all the threes, the reason that one of the reasons I think the 3-point shooting was so poor, probably not as poor as it was, is that they're not coming from paint touches and kick out. They're coming from, Sheffield are kind of taking turns a little bit with Nixon and Chapman. There's a little bit of ball movement in that, but not a tremendous amount. And out of all those guys on the court, the one guy who can make a shot consistently off the dribble on a mismatch, stepping back, is Dirk.
mm,
And he was the one who made the shots, and he won the game.
mm. And he was the leading scorer for Sheffield with 25 points, Dirk Williams. 19.6 rebounds for Kern. Ocherobi had 12. Allen, 27 points, 11 of 17 shooting. Nobody else in double figures. The rest of the team was 16 for 57 shooting.
Yeah, that's tough, but it's all about the nature of the shots and the quality of shots. I like Sheffield's defense. Sheffield have actually, for a team which is loaded with what you would think is proven offensive talent,
Mm,
they're actually more impressive at the defensive end at the moment than they are at the offensive end.
mm,
Because Williams and Routinho, um, Williams, obviously, they're starting like they did last year with Anderson and Routinho, but Williams offers you so much more offensive than Anderson, gives
mm,
you more balance. Chapman still isn't where he was, so he's going to be a project to get, to kind of grind into it over the next few weeks. And obviously Nixon is kind of a little bit hot and cold with his shooting, but that they've got the most. And Kern is this kind of jack in the box live wire. Goodness knows what's going to happen off the bench. He's not going to die wondering. Yeah,
mm,
basically, he might be 4-4, he might be 0-4 with two charges.
mm,
Um, but they've probably got the most pieces out of anybody outside of London, if you were looking at it.
mm,
Deloach will be interesting to see if they look to replace Deloach or what level his injuries at, because it did not look good when he walked
mm,
off, when he
mm.
was carried off. And obviously this time last year they picked up play.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And also the things happen, and it's how you kind of respond to them that makes a difference.
Mm. There we go. We've reached the end.
Reach the end. What are we going to do? How are we going to, I'm not sure. The I'll be interested to know what the coaches are saying to the owners about the refs,
Mm.
because at some point there is going to be, and I said it wouldn't be after the first week, because the first week's everybody just getting to know each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, after the first week, there at some point there is going to be, a pressure point in relation to, stuff that is happening and stuff that is missed in games, whereby, we're getting to that point whereby, no one likes to be 0-4 if you're Leicester, 0-3 if you're Caledonia.
Mm,
They're going to be clawing to win games, right? Because jobs are on the line. Most
mm,
of these players will be on 8-game contracts.
mm,
The club will have up to 8 games normally to decide whether they want to keep them. Right? That means there's going to be a degree of physicality, there's going to be a degree of stress, there's going to be a degree of pressure.
mm.
Not so much the calls that you make, it's how you're going to manage the games.
Yeah.
And I'm not convinced at the moment that we're in a position whereby the other thing that's kind of concerned me a little bit is that we've had such a variety of refing games, not just being the same group. I've seen lots of faces, and I would have preferred it if they'd got a kind of a group of 8 or 9 together that they thought, or maybe even less,
Mm,
thought had either experience of it or were up to it. But and kind of busting around the country rather than kind of promoting everybody. So there's stuff to go on. I mean, I just hope it will lead to bit of common sense from everybody. I don't think the whole recognition thing is being made out to be the paper tiger that it always
Mm.
was. At
Yeah.
the end of the day, no one's suspending SLB teams, no one's suspending players. The games are going on, the
Mm.
league is going on. Um, the only difference in the league is the fact that we don't have the same refs. That's it.
Mm.
Everything else is exactly the same. There's no threats of, there's no sanctions being passed on teams, clubs, they're not being fined for playing games or anything like that.
Mm.
It's all basically just, bullmen fighting over a comb.
Mm.
To just kind of, we've created this whole thing about this group needs to be recognized by this group. Why?
Mm.
And to a certain degree, the SRB clubs have kind of called the bluff of the governing body,
Mm.
and demonstrated that well, we're just going to keep going, and and eventually, hopefully, you're going to see some sense. But we have, for whatever reason, be it terms, be it finances, be it um, credibility, be it recognition with European games, etc.
Mm.
We have 22 out of the 24 guys who ref last year who aren't refing at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the reality of it. I think for the benefit of everybody, and I think they need to start refing. And I think the clubs need to find a way of fostering a better relationship um, with people, because ultimately the product is going to be impacted.
Mm.
The coaches aren't going. Believe me, the coaches. Everybody's tolerant the first week, even the second week, but the third, the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth week,
Mm.
you know, if I'll be blunt, if I'm a young Division Two or Division Three ref, I don't want to do those games, right? I wouldn't want to do them because it's like I don't want to go to the Crown Court and defend somebody on a murder charge. It's not what I do.
Mm.
I'm not embarrassed. I don't do that, and I'm not got that level of training or experience for that. And there's a real danger that in kind of in promoting people and having them ref games which are beyond their ken, as it were, beyond their level of capability, that you damage them as well.
Mm.
That makes it harder for them, and that it's tough. It is tough. It's a harder game at ref than it ever was before because it's faster. There are more screens being set. Um, there is more professionalism in relation to the conditioning, the athleticism, all that stuff. It all makes it harder.
Mm.
You've got lots of things to do, but you can't spot the goaltend that they missed
Yeah.
in Sheffield. Then that's too fast for you. You need to be putting your hand up and saying somebody else needs to do it. My
Mm.
two pennies.
Yeah, well, my thing about it is the physicality thing. I just think, again, going back to Sheffield and Leicester, was it last week, or the week before, um, where there was a thing between Shelton and Chapman, and there was no call, and then all of the stuff that went on with in the game today, the technical came too late.
Yeah.
It's like you've got to, otherwise you risk the, as you say, sort of people making their own decision about how they deal with.
And then when you get a scenario that unfolded in Sheffield in the third quarter,
Mm.
where it's not the fact that somebody made a mistake, it's the fact that they were unable to unravel it.
Mm.
They were unable to unravel it. They gave two foul shots for something that's to the wrong player, but nevertheless, two foul shots for something that wasn't two foul shots.
Yeah.
That on a basic level of counting, that's all that was,
Mm.
right? And you have to have the gravitas and the ability, to go to the table and say, right, okay, well, how did this happen? And
Because the other thing is you can then go to check with the stats people, what have you got, and if they look and they go, oh, actually we've got two fouls for the, because that's what live, I've just checked it, like what live stat says is we've got two fouls for Chet Spielman at 3:14.
yeah, and which there weren't two
Yeah.
fouls. It was an
Yeah.
offensive foul, it was a rebound. It's not, it was a foul and rebound. And you have to have the nous and the ability to do that.
Mm.
And as I say, it was just no, it wasn't good. So, there needs to be a rapprochement. They need to sort it out, and that might mean some people on both sides needing to wind their necks in.
Mm.
I don't know, and that's That's as detailed as I will give it, and that means ultimately it has nothing to do with Grant. It might be something. The seven refs who are FIBA refs, maybe I get it.
Mm.
I get it. If you're a FIBA ref and you're being told that this might impact you, I get
Mm.
it. You know,
But
and but
like Ed, for example, was refereeing the game I did on Friday night, Monaco against Dubai, uh, uh, and obviously London are playing in a EuroLeague competition in Euro Cup, so it's sort of odd.
well, yeah, but I mean, but FIBA, that's the thing. Is Euro Cup or Euro League, is it a FIBA competition? Technically,
No, it's
is it
not.
is it recognized? Yes, it is, or it's
Yeah,
recognized to the degree where
yeah,
they allow it to happen, just like the SLB. The whole thing is just, it's all, it's it's a parody of what sports should be.
mm,
The teams go on the court, they play the game, and we see who win. Instead, we've got men who've got no history in the sport standing there saying, "Oh, we need to license this and recognize that," and all sorts of nonsense,
mm,
And everybody just needs to get over themselves.
mm,
And I'm afraid, and I put that on, as I say, and some of the refs, but all the whatever if you've spent time and effort and commitment, which all our referees have, in getting to the point whereby you're at that level, then that's the level you should be refereeing at.
mm,
And kind of sitting out because we don't know about this, or we might get in trouble for this or the other. To me, eventually you got to decide, do you want to do it or not?
mm,
I don't want to lose a lot of good referees. Um, because everybody thinks they can bumble on as we are at the moment,
mm,
and I think that, so I'm on the side of Tahir, and I don't know the details of whatever negotiations have gone on. I don't know it. I don't really want to know it. Um, Obviously, there's been some stuff published in relation. I mean, the league published their rules
mm,
this week, eventually. And one of the rules, rather interestingly, I thought rather unnecessarily, but maybe it was with a point. They published the referees' fees and the table fees as part of
mm,
those rules. And there's other areas, other people have published stuff which says that the referees are asking for a substantial pay rise. Well, there
mm,
might be, it's a negotiation. Just everybody just sort it out.
mm,
You know, if we're talking about teams with budgets of millions of pounds, or £500,000 or whatever, then it's a negotiation. But don't think you can just continue on the way we are. That isn't, and it's not even what I've seen so far. It's the way it will be, Dan. You know it.
mm,
I know it. It's a hard, hard, hard job, and it's going to get harder as the pressure on teams intensifies. The pressure intensifies when you've got something to play for, be it getting off the bottom, which no one wants to be, right, or playing at the top. Okay, and as that pressure goes up, it's going to break some people,
mm.
and it's not
And the
right.
other thing is we haven't had like a ton of close games
No,
in all of this, so and that's obviously, you know,
it's
that
a real pinch point.
the
Yes.
yeah, that's where
But what I've seen is sufficient to tell me that if we do, we're in trouble.
mm,
That's a 2 point game today on basis of two foul shots that they shouldn't have got.
mm,
If I'm Caledonia, I'm saying that score sheet.
mm. You I don't think you're allowed to sign the
I
score
think
sheet
there
in
is
some.
something about, I think there is in relation to, I looked at the rules, something in relation to either timing or counting errors, I think. I'm signing the score sheet. And just so people know, I'd have to go through rules again and check it, but signing the score sheet means basically you're putting in a protest,
Yeah.
on the basis of a demonstrable error. And maybe it gets nowhere because teams don't want to make protests because they get charged £500 for it and they generally get refused. But that type of situation, whether people get technicals or don't get technicals, a situation whereby someone a team gets two foul shots that they shouldn't get, and which then should have been disallowed because they're taken by the wrong guy.
Mm,
Just cannot happen.
mm,
It can't happen. And I'm afraid we've had a couple of incidences in about the 6 years we've done it where we've had slightly dubious situations
yeah.
but generally they've ended up getting it right. And I remember there's one in Newcastle whereby they ended up wiping it off and getting it right. Um, and
Interestingly, by the way, the first foul that's listed at 314 was on Dirk Williams, and the second foul that was listed at 314 was on Nick Kern. So
Well, what happened was Jet Spearman put his arm in the back of Dirt Williams as he's going for a rebound.
mm,
It's probably marginal as to whether it's a foul or not. All the Caledonia guys thought the foul was on Sheffield, so that didn't help
mm,
because the refs clearly were over. Albeit the ref did signal quite quickly that way, but it was a late call, if I can put it that way.
mm,
So that probably didn't help. And then suddenly three becomes five
mm,
on the score on the scoreboard. Um, and yeah, just bad,
mm.
bad, bad.
Well, let's hope for some sort of resolution fairly quickly about all of that.
Hope so, yeah.
But it's slightly above our pay grade, other than to just worry.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, no, I mean, what we do on this is this hopefully as well as just commenting on what we've seen because that's easy. Anybody can
Mm,
say this is what we've seen. This is what we do is project, isn't it?
mm,
Projecting forward. That's what I'm talking about. Anderson and York and projecting forward. How's it going to make them feel? Where's their ceiling now? I am projecting Bedlam in about 3 weeks' time.
mm,
When it starts being 2 games a week, when coaches are playing and players are playing for their jobs, I'm genuinely Bedlam. I don't think it's sustainable.
mm,
So just can we get the adults in the room
mm.
and sort it out? And if not, just give me a call. I'll mediate
Mhm.
for an appropriate rate.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, which will be more than the refs get paid,
yeah.
considerably more per hour.
Yeah, yeah. Bloody lawyers per
But
hour.
exactly, it's always an angle, Dan. It's always an angle.
Right, on that slightly depressing note, I think we should call it an evening for a Sunday night. I think we probably stretched that to an hour, did we? I don't know.
Happy
What,
days. Yeah, the wife
yeah,
didn't.
happy
I
days.
told the wife it'd be half an hour, and she just looked at
Yeah.
me like, "Yeah, right.
And
Yeah."
what did my wife? What was it? 2 weeks ago, my wife was sat in the room and she went, "Did you actually talk about any games?"
No, that's not the
Yeah.
point. That's not the point. You don't understand. Oh, dear.
Right, on that lack of understanding,
Yeah.
we will go. So have a great
But
week,
that
every.
wasn't a
Yeah.
misogynistic comment. If anybody wants to complain, no one ever does complain, but there's no one ever watches. But if anyone does, that was not meant to be misogynistic. Apologies.
The let's
Nine
go,
misogynism.
let's go, let's go. Right, have a great week, everybody. See you again next week. I don't know what's happening, but we'll do it at next week at some point. Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.